Morning on this Friday, the 21st of August, and today I'll be reading to you again following the daily lectionary, and another reading from Ezekiel, and it's a short passage, Ezekiel 31:15 to 18. This is what the Sovereign Lord says: "On the day when the tree goes to the world of the dead, I'll make the underground waters cover it as a sign of mourning. I'll hold back rivers and not let many streams flow out, because the tree has died. I'll bring darkness over the Lebanon mountains and make all the trees of the forest wither. When I send it down to the world of the dead, the noise of its downfall will shake the nations. All the trees of Eden and the choice well-watered trees of Lebanon who've gone to the world below will be pleased at its downfall. They will go with it to the world of the dead to join those who have already fallen, and those who live under its shadow will be scattered among the nations. The tree is the king of Egypt and all his people. Not even the trees in Eden were so tall and impressive, but now, like the trees of Eden, it will go down to the world of the dead and join the ungodly and those killed in battle. I have spoken, says the Sovereign Lord." Okay, that's pretty heavy. And those two chapters in Ezekiel, chapters 31 and 32, are actually God, the words that Ezekiel speaks of God's judgment on the nation of Egypt. And given that this is the exile period, what happens over the next few centuries is that Egypt, which had been a world power and shaker and mover in the region, over the coming generations and centuries, is progressively conquered. The kings are replaced by Greeks under Alexander and his people who followed him, and then eventually conquered again by the Romans. And Egypt's never had that sort of influence ever since. Now, the words as they're written here almost have this echo of Jesus' words about the mustard plant growing into a great plant and being a place for all the birds of the air. The earlier part of chapter 31 talks about this image of Egypt being a well-watered plant that has influence far beyond what you would normally expect. And while this is actually a really difficult passage to grasp in our day and age, it does have a really good tie-in, because at this time, the people of Israel, of Judah, when they were conquered by the Babylonians, they kept on running to other nations for help, and one that they went to constantly was Egypt, for no avail. Egypt was dealing with its own problems and didn't have that influence. But people were looking there. These might be accounted as some of the injustice that in the armies of Babylon, and people being forcibly relocated, forcibly enculturated into a different culture, forcibly made to learn different languages. Egypt looked powerful, but nothing could assail it. And we have nations in our contemporary world who say, we are great, we are wonderful, we are powerful because God has blessed us, and we must be something special. The truth of the matter is they've gone a step too far. That the truth is, yes, you are powerful because God has blessed you. It does not follow that you are something wonderful. God bless me because I'm that place of earth, or whatever nation it happens to be. That's not the point. Power, status alone does not guarantee that you are right with God. Power and status does not mean that you will endure. It doesn't even mean you'll survive the next 10 minutes. One wag of a Australian politician a number of years ago said, the trouble with politics is one day you cock of the walk and the next day you're the feather duster. This is what happens with Egypt here. If we rely on our strength, our reputation, the respect that we are due from other people, you may be sorely disappointed. The only respect that we need is the love and respect that God gives us. And that will carry us through anything and everything. When Paul writes his letters, if he was worried about what people said about him, he would have been a mess. In fact, in some ways, Paul knew from what Jesus had saved him from, his life of violence and persecution, that anything anybody said about him was a pittance compared to the reality of who he had been, and nothing could take away the wonder of what God's grace was doing for him as a person. Now, you might notice that I haven't mentioned the scene behind me. We'll show another picture at some later stage, but this I thought would be a good one. We're actually sitting here in Egypt, and this is a place called Mokattam in Cairo. It is actually the part of the city which is the city of slums, garbage dump. And the people who live in this part of the city live on the garbage dump. What has been one of the poorest nations on earth. A nation that used to be great and is now a shadow of its former self. And these people who live here, Christians, are the poorest of the poor. And this is their church in Mokattam. It has been carved out of the rock. And there are carvings that are 3 and 4 stories high, which I'll show in a later morning devotion, which tell the Bible story of hope and grace. And as they're walking towards church or walking to home in the evening after leaving the garbage piles of Cairo, they see God's message of hope in the midst of destruction. So even though this nation's never been what it was in ancient times, or never become what it was in ancient times, there is still hope that in the middle of complete destruction, there can be works of incredible beauty, works which continue to remind people that hope doesn't reside in fame or power, just as it doesn't reside, as we were talking yesterday, about Tyre and beauty and light. Our hope, our joy is because of our relationship with Christ and does not depend on circumstances. Lord, help us to see that our joy in you depends upon you, not in our circumstances. May we be able to pray and to say as Paul did, that I'm content in all things with little or with much. To be thought well of, to be thought little of. Just to know that our joy comes from being faithful to you and experiencing your faithfulness to us now and always. Amen.